Heyo, how's everybody doing? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you feel me? How's everybody doing tonight? We're gonna be breaking some myths, wow, wow, breaking some myths, wow, wow. So that should be the goal. Um, it's interesting. It says that I've been live for 5 minutes on my side. I haven't been, have I? Let me adjust the camera a little bit. The light that from that tank is a bit much, even though I've got the setup here. We'll get that out of the way too. All right, now you can see my mediocre mug. How's everybody doing? We doing good tonight? We having a good night? Let's see who's alive and well and in the chat. We've got Jubilition. Pete, what's going on down in Perth? How's it going? If you guys haven't checked out Pete, Aquarium Plant Man's Instagram, he's got some killer aquascape, especially, you know, Australia and Perth in particular is way one of the most remote cities in the world, as far as being far from other population centers. And the stuff he does with what he has, even though it's not the most diverse selection around in the world, is just great. Hey, what's up, Kenny? How's it going, buddy? Good to see you, Danikin, and also Danny, if you're watching. Spirulina, what's going on? Caught a live stream, right on. I'm so glad you did. Dragon Lair, what's going on? Good to see you. And Bates and Genetics, GRB, Texas Fish. Oh, we got all the good folks in here tonight. So tonight I kind of wanted to go over some of the most prevalent myths. Of course, I set everything down within reach was the goal, and then I can't reach it because I put it like under me or behind me or something. But I wanted to tackle plant myths, and at the same time, if we have any questions, let me know what those are. Just do at Secret History Living in Your Aquarium, at Alexander Williamson, whatever, at Alex. It helps. If you're a member, it already kind of highlights you better as well, because it puts it in top chat, and that's what I see through the video capture or software, the third-party software I use for streams. But that being said, I've got my computer up here too, so I can see the whole chat. It's just I miss it easier, especially if I'm walking around with the camera on the go and using the phone or something too. Then it gets a little unmanageable. Angie, what's going up? Lewis or Louis? Is it Lou? Lou? It's probably just Lou. 500. What's going on? Mick, what's up? How's it going? So thank you so much for the $10 super chat at Danikin. Thank you, Kenny and Danny. You guys appreciate it. They said to help with more collecting gear, loving the videos. Yeah, I need to build a setup to actually have a when I'm out in the field, I want to make a glass box. Acrylic is fine and all, it just gets scuffed and scraped really easily, and so I want to figure out a glass replacement for the ones I have. Now I have a couple glass jars that I just happened to get at a secondhand store, like a thrift store, and those work okay. But what I need is a narrow one. By the way, this is my oldest tie-dye. It's 20 years old now. Wow. Yeah, 20 years old. Also, I think I saw another super chat. Sometimes it doesn't register when it's early. Laura Sutton, thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate that. 503. Shanna, thank you so much for the $2.99 little pump up the volume, pump that bass. Appreciate it, guys. And then Richard McCarthy, thank you so much for becoming a secret supporter level member. Appreciate it. Jordan Babcock, welcome. All right, let's see here. So are we all getting settled in? Son of Quack, you didn't know I was streaming tonight. Yeah, this is the spot I took over from Danikin Aquatics, also of the infamy of the 100 Fish Countdown and the Portland Fish Festival, Fishtoberfest coming up, which I and Jason from Redfish Bluefish will be speaking at. If you guys know, we're buddies, we're BFFs. So that'll be a cool opportunity to both speak there, and it should be really cool. If you're free in October, definitely come check out what's going down there. Still not getting paid by Dr. Pepper. It's a shame. Keith, welcome. Oh, you got a complete mystery pack off of Facebook, huh? That can be a mystery. Can definitely be interesting. You know, I think people tend to give stem plants in that. If you can luck out and get like an Anubias or sword fern or something like that or bulbitis, then you're really cooking with gas. If that occurs. But one moment, let me just turn one thing up really quick. Yeah, I'll be right back. I'm back with a bang. All right, so fish mitts. I'm just gonna hop in. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. Let me get. Hold on. Tell me if you can hear me. Tell me if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is my mic working clearly? Oh yeah, I've got what do you call it? All right, you can hear me. You're like, shut up, we can hear you. Yeah, the sciatic and the nerve damage and the 5 busted up discs. Yeah, that makes it getting up. That was a graceful getting up, honestly. That was about as good as I can do. So, all right, let's hop right into some of these myths. These are things that I've gathered. Sometimes I get them in new videos and that other YouTubers put up. And there's lots of ways to skin a catfish. You can grow plants a lot of different ways. So I'm not saying that everything is true or false, debunked, a myth, whatever. But there are some things that are just generally scientifically kind of agreed upon as such. And then there's some things that are straight up wrong. You will kill the plant, or you will hurt your fish, or whatever it may be. Hey, Ginger, what's going on? Good to see you. Ian, good to see you. Always good. Lots of good folks strolling on in this evening. I know I just saw that, what's his name? I'm a member of his channel. Big Bob Steamfot is doing like a movie screening or something tonight. So, yeah. K-Stu, thank you for letting me know the sound is working and that I am the man, just the only one. It's me. Lumpy Dog, what's up? Welcome. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, even if they're not plant related, let me know. I'm here to, field the most difficult questions or pass them off to someone smarter than me. Let's see here. Aquaballs, what's going on, George? How are you doing, my friend? Alex, I have a question. Can you use pH pen for salt water and fresh water? What I'm trying to ask you is, do I need different pen to work for different water? So my answer to that was you would probably want to anyways, unless you're going to thoroughly clean it every time. Now, you should clean it in distilled water, ideally, like wash it off, rinse it off. But if you have any hard water whatsoever, you're going to leave behind calcite, calcium, things like that, and salts as well, other minerals too, manganese, magnesium, carbon itself, and different compounds all build up on the probes. And the way it measures the total dissolved solids, or the pH, all those things, really, it only has one way that we've figured out to measure those things, unless you're using optics. So unless you're using a laser or some ray of visible light and a sensor that then gets a spectrum or a readout, like gas mass spectrometry or gas chromatography, which is real expensive. Those pens basically work by having two probes, and one sends out a signal, or there's a third-party signal sent out, and it measures the conductivity. So it makes a big difference if the antennas are clean. Now, in salt water, those antennas can get dirty pretty quickly, and so I would say that you should probably keep one for each. They're pretty cheap. So, I mean, you can get them for $10 or $12. I think I've got one linked even in the description. I think it's linked in the description below. But if you want to support the channel, I always appreciate it when people go shopping through the link. Also, I have another big announcement, which is, haven't even gotten a hold of Alan or Mridgel. I haven't seen Mridgel in a minute. I think he's a busy guy lately. But we're going to extend the contest another month, because just too many folks that are in the contest want another month. Now, I haven't gotten too much pushback of people saying like, I'm ready and I busted my butt, and yeah, so I haven't gotten any of that comment, and I was afraid I would. So we'll see. But for now, I think September 10th will be the new date. So congratulations. And hey, what's up, Jasmine's Tails, Fur and Fins? How's it going? Good to see you in here. The morning news anchor of the fish world, as it were, every weekday. Kendrick, is it Luce? Hello. Jose Gonzalez. Hi, Alex. Regards from the UK. I'm going to a country for a few days, holiday for 15 days. Oh, nice. I don't have anyone to keep an eye on my fishes. Do you think I can not feed them for that long? What do you recommend? So that's actually a really good question too. And it depends on the plants you have in your tank. So what kind of plants, what kind of fish? And basically, if you have a tank that's over a year old and you have nano fish, they'll probably be okay for 2 weeks. What I would do is I would feed them more in general for 2 or 3 days beforehand. Don't give them a huge amount of food the day before you leave, because what that's going to do is that's going to spike the ammonia when they poop it out, or if they don't eat it all. And you just don't want that going on while you're out of town, because it could throw some things off. But if you have a tank that is stocked less than that's like around 1 inch per gallon of fish, or even 2 inches per gallon of fish, and you don't have any brand new baby fry or any big predatory fish that need like a big meaty diet, like a puffer or Oscar or some of the bigger cichlids, you can get away with up to 3 weeks oftentimes with fish without them eating anything. But in a balanced tank, you can definitely leave them almost like this tank here. I've almost been able to indefinitely leave those fish without feeding them anymore, because there are Daphnia, there are planaria, even though nobody likes planaria, and all that kind of stuff. Mason, how do you become a mod? I have to bestow it upon you. It's like being knighted. Mohammed, welcome. Texas Fish. That was your exact comment. All right. Was your exact comment? What did I miss something? George, you're working on a dry started tank. Yeah, dry start tanks are really cool. I've done a couple episodes where we touch on the dry start stuff, and yeah, it's it can be a little tricky to get things going sometimes. It's really important to keep that humidity up. If you're going to dry start a tank, there are some species that are way better than others. And ideally, you need all tissue culture and all or all immersed form plants. So how do you know that that's the case? Like, you don't want to go order from, for instance, Aquarium Co-op has been working really hard to transfer all the plants they get from Florida aquatic nurseries or wherever they're sourcing their plants from. I think that's still where they get a lot of them from. That's where a lot of people get them from. If they come in the little plastic pots with the rock wool and have a little tag that's yellow, it's generally Florida aquatic nurseries. They have a big monopoly in the market, essentially. But things like Crypt and Water Sprite and Wisteria and Val and Anubias, all that stuff comes in those pots frequently. And, you know, when you get it in, it's been usually its roots have been in very soggy substrate. Sometimes it's in just normal dirt, but usually what it is it's in hydroponic soil. So it's in these clay beads and it's full of nutrients. So it's had a ton of nutrients. It's had more carbon than you could pump into your aquarium, basically speaking. So when you do a dry start, it will allow your tank to actually function as the carbon adjustment period somewhat, especially if you take saran wrap or something completely that seals off the air and the outside atmosphere completely, then that would do that. But what the thing is, you want some oxygen, you want some CO2, you want some O2, I mean, just all the trace elements too. And then obviously 78% or something like that of our atmosphere is nitrogen. So when plants are growing above ground, above water, you know, they have access to the atmosphere, which is oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, and usually light. So when you dry start, you get to cheat, and then really the only advantage there is getting the roots in, getting those roots established, and then when you flood the tank after say a month or 2 weeks or 8 weeks, it really depends. A lot of people spend usually a month to 2 months. Then it usually will transfer a lot better if those roots have taken hold into a substrate. And that's why, you know, the roots usually don't melt as bad as the leaves and the upper tissues in the plant. And they'll be able to acquire, they're used to soil getting saturated with water when it rains, especially in tropical plants and regions. So even if they've been grown on land at the nursery, like most species, they will be used to having wet roots. So you're not going to drown a dry plant ever, but you may kill a wet plant when you put it on land. You can shock it, dry it out, and you end up with just crispy oregano. It looks like the stuff that someone tried to sell you in whatever 8th grade behind the convenience store in a little baggie. Stephen, hey, welcome, Jason. I was just saying that we're both going to be yakking it up. Oh, maybe I should use a different word. Chatting, speaking down in Portland in October, and that I'm excited. And he's going to be talking, I believe, about tissue cultures, something near and dear to both of his and my hearts. Definitely watched him kind of tinker and establish a lab of setting that up, and learned a lot secondhand through him. And then just also trying to keep pace with him without feeling dumb, you know, so he pushed me on the research. So I've got a few videos, as well as he's got some great videos if you're curious about the tissue culture thing, because it's not as simple as, you know, there's, I don't know if you want to call it a myth, but there's the notion that tissue culture plants are immersed or submerged, or they're clones, so they're totally different. And all of that's a little bit true and a little bit wrong. You know, they are clones, or they are grafts, whatever you want to call it, from a mother plant, or a undifferentiated cell cluster, really is what it is. And then that grows, and then from there you kind of take your cuttings from a main plant source, and so the age of those cells in the plant can be older. So if you have a flowering or fruiting plant, by using a tissue culture, you can kind of cheat and you already have a mature sunflower, genetically speaking, the time clock on those cells, because you know, just like us when we're born, you don't go through puberty until you're whatever, early teens or something, or just before that. Well, plants, you know, they don't fruit until X or Y or Z happens. And so some plants are hard to get to fruit or flower, or even just grow vegetatively well. And so one of the upsides to tissue cultures can be that they've already received that trigger genetically. They've already gone into that phase of growth in their life. And then you're starting from there. That being said, there is a lot of research going into the fact of like internal clockwise, how old is a plant? Like, do plant cells have 120 rebirths, or, you know, 1,000,000 times the cell can be killed and or die of old age or whatever, and then grow back? And then over time, how many errors occur? Because really it's either oxidation, errors, or damage from harm and being chewed on, or a bad environment, that's going to kill a plant. Plants live a really long time, and generally those plants, you know, this is another myth that I see frequently, that is the thought that Anubias need to be trimmed frequently, or that they need to, or not trimmed necessarily. Let me start over. I want to approach this differently. So the thought that sword plants, Anubias, bucephalandra, when it gets little holes in it, that you've got a nutrient deficiency, and therefore you need to add something to your water. Now that may be true, but you really need to have other plants and be taking cues from your tank as a whole. I mean, if you've got ram's horn snails, for instance, how's the clarity on their shell? What's the GH in your tank? If you don't have test equipment to know all of that stuff, which it's inexpensive. I've linked below, like I said, in the description there's some links, I think, to the API general test kit at the cheapest price. I could find it on Amazon. That's the liquid test kits, in my opinion, are the best place to start for all things when you're trying to figure out algae and, you know, pH, GH. You'll have to get a separate kit for GH and for KH, and then you'll need an actual probe for well, you could get a probe for pH too, but you need an actual probe for the TDS is usually what I recommend. And then use the less expensive reagents, the API test kit or whatever brand, but I like those. I don't think test strips are super effective, in my opinion. I would avoid those if you need any accuracy that is if you really need accuracy and detail in your care plan and your care regimen, then I would definitely advise getting the liquid test kits and not the little strips, because the little strips, yeah, they'll tell you if you have any ammonia, like it'll be green or whatever, but if you're at 0.5, like where's the cutoff? And you know, sometimes they're just not constructed very well generally either. In fact, litmus paper is probably a better quality thing than a lot of the test strips out there, and it's dirt cheap. Litmus paper is just a paper that's been treated with this reagent that's been around for, I don't know, 170 years, 180 years, something like that. And when you dip it into a substance, it'll turn colors, and you just reference that. Yes, yeah, that's funny, Jason. Somebody Redfish Bluefish just said, well, you guys, I've got a list here of myths that are from questions just from the last week. But another question I was getting, I'll finish the Anubias one in a second, was, but the fact that all plants, when you want the red color, you need to put iron in there. About 90% of plants that we keep in the aquarium hobby commonly, they don't need iron to be red. What they need low nitrites and nitrates. They can have, actually, a lot of them can have ammonia in the roots, but in the water column, you need real clear water, you need flow, And then you need highlight, because the anthocyanins and there's the ascotaskin is one, and then there's other chemicals too, like lycopene and other things that you might have heard of, that they don't just serve the purpose in the plant of turning it colors for the sake of turning it colors, but some of these things do have pigmentation to them, and it all has to do with protecting the plant from the UV and UVA, UVB rays. And so the red color, you've still got green chlorophyllc cells underneath that or beside that. And then there's also in some plants, especially ancient plant lineages, there are some that use photosynthesis C3, which is, I believe that's the common one, C2 and 3. And then there's also 4 and 5, which I want to do an episode on that, because I need to unconfuse myself about some of those details. But basically, it has to do with the ability to process and photosynthesize, whether it needs certain other chemicals. So you need CO2, you need nitrogen, you need trace elements for photosynthesis in most plants. Whereas there are some plants that have figured out how to do that, or algae, how to do that without needing the oxygen-rich environment. They can do it in a non-oxygenated environment, like some of the cyanobacteria can do that, for instance. And then that evolution is crossed over, and they don't know how exactly, but they assume that little cells ate big cells, and then the clear cell was able to use the waste byproduct being created. So maybe you have a cell going around, a single cell organism 500 million years ago, and it eats CO2. That's what it uses to break down. Almost everything breaks down other stuff into ATP at some point. That's kind of the energy force of almost all cells in life forms, from fungi to animals and fish and plants and living things in general. It's the most common energy currency, kind of like electricity. It's the lowest unit on the scale, and then it gets, you got your complex amino acids and enzymes and things like that too, and water, but all those are trumped by the ATP, allowing the organelles, or basically just like we have organs, cells have organs. And so that clear single cell creature's floating around, and it wants CO2. Well, maybe it found a little algae that has CO2, and it doesn't have stomach acid to eat things. It literally just crushes them, or maybe it has maybe it uses the environment, like carbonic acid or something, and just allows that to break down over time, and then kind of eats it on its own. Maybe its own pH is a little acidic, whatever it may be. I mean, there's lots of different ways, but somehow it ate the other cell that was photosynthesizing and didn't die, and then it still kept using that waste byproduct that was being made. So just like we know that plants make oxygen out of CO2, where they steal the carbon for their own growth, and then they give the oxygen, or O2, back to the atmosphere, and that's why we love trees. It's actually algae and those simpler plants that are probably responsible for turning our world into a world of oxygen breathing creatures. Before that period, before the great oxygenation period, nothing breathed oxygen. It didn't need it. I mean, and so photosynthesis and oxygen go hand in hand in their evolution for some of those reasons. Now, I've seen a couple questions. The one I want to kind of finish up first, and what we can do here is I can actually take you guys on a journey, take you on a magical trip, on a magical mystery tour, if you will. Let me get up. Sorry, guys. Old man trying to get up again. All right. So when we are looking through our tanks, and right now I'm going to move the CO2. Let me turn this around too. Breaking the camera, breaking the camera. Wow, wow, wow. Breaking the camera, breaking the camera. All right. So CO2 is going in this tank. you know, there's some contamination issues if I cared, but I don't. These two tanks are, might as well be the same tank the way I treat them. All right, let's see here. So when we're looking at a plant like, let's clear some things out of the way here. When you're looking at a plant like this one, it would be really easy to look at these. Let's go underneath the light. It'd be really easy to look at this and say, oh man, that's because of a nutrient deficiency. But what you need to know is this Anubias caufifolia is over 8 months, 9 months old, this leaf. It's time for it to go. I can trim it and a new leaf will come forward. In fact, it would like me to do that. In the wild, some animal or turbulence or it drying out or whatever it may be on most plants would have taken this out. Here you can actually see on the edges of this plant here, this Anubias, that the edges are clear and there's some yellow. You could assume that that was from, you know, a lack of phosphates or something like that. But yet again, we look and at the underside, what's happened? Well, either a nearite snail or a pleco, like the one right there, got a little gung ho, and their mouth probably stripped or bruised the leaf, and then there became dead tissue there. Now, once there's dead tissue there, then you'll see the snails move in. So that's another myth that I hear all the time, that is, I don't want snails, they're going to eat my plants. Well, unless it's an apple snail or a mystery snail, pretty much not going to eat your plants. They want the easy to eat tissue. In fact, you can see it going on here. They want algae. They want this stuff where you've got little pieces that just break up and break off. You know, they want any sort of easy to eat stuff. They're detrivores. You know, they eat detritus, and they'll eat fresh veggies and plants if they get a chance. Now, one thing you can tell is if you're trying to figure out if there's a deficiency in your plants versus if your plants are being munched on by something, because we're going to talk about two people will say, oh, I can't have goldfish or I can't have cichlids because I have plants. And that's not true either. But one way you can tell is if it's near the crown of the plant. So when we're talking about the crown, of course, we're talking about the top. So when you look at all these plants right here, we've got the top of the plant. And in this crown area, that's where the new growth is coming from. And if you have high light, you're going to see, depending on how much light the plant has, the density of how often the leaves or nodes happen gets denser. So you can actually read this like a book. And you can see that this had pretty even light all the way through its growth, through about a foot of it. And then at the top here, they're all right next to each other. And that will stretch out and adjust on its own a little bit as this crown grows out and scales to size. It doesn't taper up. But this is, this plant here has some holes in it all the way up by the crown. And this is a Ludwigia that should be growing quickly. I mean, this thing can grow like an inch a day under ideal conditions, or half an inch a day. And so by that, and by looking at the fact that, look at all this growth here, we don't have any real issues in the water lettuce. We've still got duckweed growing. Now, we don't have any algae. So when we look at the tank, if you have no algae, but a strong or fairly strong light, over here we've got a Fluval 2.0 and an Archeon light, or Archaea. I don't remember which model it is or anything. This tank has grown into a jungle that's so dense, the light's not penetrating low down. And I'm kind of curious what's going to happen. But as plants become, as I was talking about before, if you're going from, now I wish we had better lighting here. Well, let's see if we can get the lighting a little bit better. So here you can kind of see, I'm holding a burning light. That is a bad idea. Hold on. Let me put this light down, and we'll use the littler light to highlight stuff. Hopefully that'll work. So here you can see where they've actually made it, and you're going to see a strobing effect. See that? That's because all LEDs strobe which the sun doesn't do. And I've often wondered if that has any impact on your plants. I mean, the fact alone that you see those rolling lines, it's called the rolling shutter effect if you want to Google it. The fact that you see those lines right there tells you that less than, or I mean, more than every 1/30th of a second, the light is blinking, because we're filming at 30 frames per second, and it's catching somewhere in between the frame, and it looks like it's doing it twice here. They're so tight together. Otherwise, you'd get one line slowly moving. Here we've got 2 or 3. So probably every 1/10 of a second or so, the light is off and then on, off and then on, and you get that effect almost like a flip book. But that means that the light is off and not actually bringing light to your plant for half the time or whatever with an LED. So that's something to consider. Whereas a more high-powered LED, you still get the rolling effect. You see that slightly, but it's real fast, and it's one line that repeats on this Fluval that's only at 75%. So it's just, I don't know if you guys could make out the difference. I can on my own screen, but see that line going quickly there? That's the difference of a good Fluval 3.0 that you spend some money on. Now, I don't think that that's a crazy priced light. I think this is around 160 bucks. It is expensive though. If you're new to aquariums, that does sound expensive. But with this light, you can accomplish pretty much anything you want to accomplish, from blooming and fruiting all the way to, you know, highlight plants in about 18-inch deep aquarium. It will pretty much handle. Here, though, we've got floating plants, and then we've just got a density of plants. Just, I mean, it's just the light doesn't even make it down here. And everything, it's still relatively new, so it's not taxed out of nutrients. But you can see that some of these leaves and things are starting to get old, not get enough light, and die. It's not a nutrient thing necessarily; it's a light thing. And so sometimes too, you can tell when they do need nutrients. Or so what's going on here when we see the roots, that means that it either needed light so badly that it pulled itself up out of the ground, its existing root structure, as it reached by growing up, or the nutrients in the ground was not sufficient and it needed the nutrients in the water column. And this is a tank that did have root tabs, but it's been over 6 months since it's been replenished with root tabs. And we had this nice carpet here. You can see all the snails in here actually eating these very looking energy to when the snails are this small, they don't have the mouth parts to actually chew through a leaf like we were talking about, to leave those pinholes. Now, when we're looking at like a nymphaea or a lotus, a water lily, you know, this one here has holes in it, and these are very delicate. These are very like paper thin plants. And this one is a red tiger lily, or a red nymphaea lily. And you've probably seen some of the ones I've had over the years with metallic purples and blues and all different colors. This one here, these grow so incredibly fast. You'll literally see one coming up. Let's see if we've got any coming up in the works right here, right now. Yeah, there's one coming up right. If we can, let's see if I can clear out room for you guys to see. Right here, there's a little node coming up. By tomorrow or the next day, that'll be at the surface. And that's through capillary or capillary action. And it allows it, see, this has been tucked under the filter, hiding, and it's got purple on it. If you can, I don't know if you can see that hue, but it's purple and green. Whereas the ones that have been up in the highlight, they're more of like a reddish to just clear color. Whereas you can get a pretty deep purple under some of these when they don't have enough light. So that's like we were talking about, the chlorophyll, the anthocyanins move in as a sunscreen, and they darken things up, or they allow the plant, here's some red on the outside of the plant from certain angles, if you can make it out. So yeah, Lazarus, welcome. Fish boy, Steven, hello. So all just to say that, okay, so now we know that the Anubias probably not being munched on just because of the age. It's just this leaf is just old. It's had blackbeard algae grow on it, and then that's been eaten off. It's had blackbeard algae that's just died of old age. And there's one fish in particular that's helping me with eating that blackbeard algae better than anything else. But I want to say that we feed our fish so much. When people ask about vacation and things like that, that's why I kind of laugh sometimes, and I don't mean to be rude or anything, but our fish will eat all this stuff that we don't think of as fish food. They'll work on it. They'll eat it. Even, your carnivorous fish, your tetras or your gouramis or whatever, they'll work on eating anything. Now here we can see this is going to be the candidate. Now this snail is not eating this same species that we were just looking at here, Ludwigia. It's not that it is eating this leaf. It's eating the biofilm and the algae off of this leaf. And that's because I haven't given enough food for those snails to flourish. You can tell because they're eating every surface. I mean, they're eating the blackbeard algae off of the filter right now. And they're also eating diatom algae off of things. So they're just going for anything. Now, the other thing that you can tell when you're looking at something, and a lot of myths can be dispelled by this too, is we talked about how tight things grow at the crown. That tells you the speed. If they're really tight together, then they're reaching the intensity limit that they're going to be able to take, because a plant can only grow so fast based on its resources and, somewhat by its biology too. So then, and another great example here, this is a green plant normally. Down here it's green, then it turns to olive. It's all the way to a nice bronze and pink color up here. This is Bacopa colorata. And because it's been near the top of the water, the plant knows I can't grow. I don't really care if I get up out of the water that much. It's not concentrated on that. It's got nutrients that it needs. I dose this tank, and this tank gets some CO2. It doesn't move around the best right now because it's so full of plants. But basically, it has what it needs. And so the crown of the plants get really dense. And you'll see that they get right to the top, and then all of a sudden, boom, it gets really dense. Now, the opposite of that is if they need nutrients or they need light, they'll reach. So this one, it was way too dark below. And because of that, there's no needles. And it put all its energy not on photosynthetic tissue like leaves, but rather it just said, just grow, get us up there to the light. So there's that. And then you can also look for, as I've shown at other times too, because all this just ties into myths that I hear all the time. And I just want to show examples of certain processes happening. But here, like you can see these white, right in here, these white little roots that are growing off. That is because this plant it wants to get up out of this tank, but it didn't use the energy because the light was too intense, too close. It needed light higher up. It would have grown all the way up here lengthwise, and it has put out shoots. Look at all the shoots it's put out. And those are not even receiving that good a light. So they stay small and dense because of that. Whereas the crown is just super dense on this thing. It's like a club. And the colors, though, that's how you get these really good colors. That's how you get the intense colors. And I need to clean this duckweed off. But that's how you get the intense colors, is you give it all the light it needs. Then it makes itself the sunscreen. Then it densens the leaves, just like this one here. You can see it was reaching. Boom, it got up out of the tangle and into the light. And now it's working on making itself hardier. And that will sometimes fix the little holes on plants, things like that. And other times not. But with like Anubias and things like that, it may take 6 months. It may take 2 months. I don't know. It just depends on your tank to grow a new leaf. or for a new leaf to want to sprout. And so when you see the holes in them, you don't always want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But like this one, it's coming to an age, same with sword plants, where I would probably, I'm not afraid now, even though this leaf is probably, near a year old. I'm not afraid to pull it. And, it's starting to not be able, as long as it has its veins intact and it's still able to photosynthesize, it's probably, doing the plant some good. But if there's room here, like right here, there's room for a new leaf to grow. And now it will. A new leaf will grow where that break just happened. Now, I used my thumbnail. I always tell people, make sure you get a good clean break on the meteor plants. If it's a kind of mushy plant anyways, then you don't need to worry about it as much, like a real fine leaf plant or a fine stem plant. But if it's something like that, or a hippodroid or hydroides, or let's see what else has sword plants and things, they get pretty thick. AR mini or AR temple plant, also known. They'll get pretty thick stems here, and they're predisposed to rot and things. But what happens is, the other thing we don't do in our tanks that can help, especially if you're leaving on vacation, you get these leaves down here that haven't been getting light, and because of that, they can get algae. But usually you'll know if they're ready to come off by simply bending it against the grain for a minute and then bend it back up. If it comes off, it was meant to come off. Don't stress the fact that leaf is still on there. Just let it go. Let it go. I don't know the Frozen song, but I know that it's a reference. So, this is stuff that, yes, in a large tank, an ecosystem with snails and little copepods and planaria and worms, it'll break it down. But if you've been using antibiotics, you've been using disinfectants, antifungals, antiparasitics, you want to take this out. When people say gravel vac, this is what they mean. They mean get your dead fish out, get any obvious curlicues of fish poop that are floating there on plants and things. You can get that out, and you can get leaves and debris that is broken away out. But you don't want to go digging into the substrate and chunking it up, because there's nutrients that get locked in there. And yes, that leaf will break down. These leaves, both of them, will break down. And there's all of the elements that we said had to go in here: the carbon, the nitrogen, the manganese. There's a little bit of gold. There's a little bit of platinum. I mean, even in our bodies, there's all these things in very, very, very small trace amounts. But all these things are still in here, but they need to be taken apart. And in some cases, some of those elements need very specialized decomposers that maybe take, who knows, eons to infiltrate a substrate or a certain lake or biotope in the wild. And that's why we see different colors of algae, different colors of slime and pond scum, different colors of all sorts of things. Here you can see where the leaves were tucked under other water lettuce and they turn yellow. Well, this leaf now, it's starting to melt. These plants, the water lettuce, duckweed, these floating plants, they know really well what's good for them, and they melt and give you a hint like, I'm done. Now, the thing about them is they're kind of crunchy, like butter lettuce or something you get at the salad bar, or the iceberg lettuce or something. And this here, I'm gonna guess that this is from a snail, this damage here, because it's right near the heart of the plant, and we can see there's a few snails here, and they're the same snails. The other little trick about snails is you can look at them, and if the spiral is super tight and you could fit like something in the center of there, like it's indented rather than flush or only mildly indented, then that means that spiral grew very slow and tight. And so that means that the snails, they don't have enough food in here. They don't have enough detritus to eat. So I could leave that leaf in, but yet they're still going to go for the freshest new dead leaves. It sounds funny. They're not going to eat the live leaves unless they have nothing else, but they want freshly provided dead stuff. So they want, the stuff that's still attached to a plant because it's got more nutrients. And all animals, evolutionarily speaking, not that they consciously do it, but they make an effort to use their time wisely. And evolutionarily speaking, you can count everything in calories. And for a while, anthropologists did that. They said how much energy, how many calories were burned rubbing two sticks together to start a fire versus how many calories were gained by being able to cook meat and eat it that was not accessible before. Well, humans supposedly were rational actors if you get into economics, and we will not do things unless it makes sense for the net benefit. Now, if you're alive and have noticed things, that's not true on the micro level, nor did they claim it was, but on the macro overall level, that's the argument. And if you get into economic theory, you can go around for days about Keynesian economics and Austrian economics. We're not going to get into any of that. But Carla, hello. Danny, hello. And the other thing is, someone just said that won't matter unless you have CO2. So I want everybody to think about, I've got videos on algae, and if low light causes algae, that video goes through very thoroughly and explains the whole backstory of algae and how you get it, what it needs, what plants need, and how they compete. But basically, highlight, this highlight, and this is not super highlight, but it's a wide spectrum, and it's fairly high. It's close to what the Fluval produces. It's just, you can't really set it, these twin star lights. But they put out a pretty clean light that's close to vegetative growth. It's nowhere near flowering light. It's nowhere in the warm spectrum, and there's very few reds and oranges, but there are peach or kind of yellowy orange, and then there's a few red diodes you can see the reflections of. But it's more in the cool tone, blue sky day, bluebird day kind of thing, which encourages growth over flowering or the density. Again, here's just a hornwort, and at the top of the water, that's how we're getting good colors. I don't know if you have hornwort that has color. In my other tank in the other room, with the lights are not on right now, it has like red, almost a full, I've got a reference here, almost like the sleeve of this shirt, like a pinkish red in this same exact species, because all that energy, it doesn't care about growing up. You see that? The nodes are all super close together. It cares about branching off wherever it can and densening up and proving itself, getting itself armored. And in the flowering stage and things like that, like if this were up out of water, and even if it is underwater, this is where things like terpenes and trichomes and things like that come in and actually are either water repellent, like as we see here. There's little teeny hairs that we probably can't see with this camera on all of this water lettuce, and it just wicks right off. Well, there's oils and waxes and things too, and the plant will not prioritize making those. So just like herbs that, let's say some states allow and others don't, people focus on trying to get the maximum, protection out of it. So they want that highlight. They want the light close, but not burning. So it's still reaching, but that the nodes are dense. So they're trying to balance this act between, do I want a denser, brighter plant with fully loaded nutrients and all the features that plant has evolved, whether that is, a waxy shimmer, or that is a poison or some sort of toxin, or that is a fragrance to attract pollinators. But those features will be withheld or minimized until basic growth is achieved. Now, the other thing is plants, people say, oh, don't cut your plants. You can cut them back too much and they won't grow. That's pretty much not true with almost any plant. Now, there are some plants that you can cut back to the point where there's no photosynthetic nodes or space or surface area left. That's true. However, with most plants, the more adversity you throw at them, as long as they have their basic needs at the end of the day to go back to. So as long as their environment has the basic needs, you can grab them, and I mean, literally having heavy flow on a tank, these guys shouldn't be growing, but they have so much of the other stuff they need, and they're log jammed up together all on this end, that they're growing. I have duckweed in a flowing tank. That's another thing that people say, oh, you can just get rid of it with flowing water. Well, if you have intense light, you have all the nutrients in the water. No, you won't. You're still going to grow everything that can, I mean, it makes me laugh when people say things like that, because there's so many factors that are at play. Is that a general truth, though, for your average aquarist? Yes, that is generally true, that if you have flowing water, your floating plants aren't going to do as well. But that same floating water will also cause all your stems on your plants to be much more rugged, much more able to withstand being bent around and moved around. And with that dense growing, if we've got all the macro and micronutrients they need, I mean, they get downright rubbery. They get protected with those outside layers. They get extra layers of little cell walls or bark if it's on a tree, And the same thing happens on plants. They've got extracellular or cell walls, but the cell walls become more. Here's a piece of the same exact plant that wasn't growing up under high light, but it still had high nutrients and CO2. And so the nodes are all close. It still had enough light, but it didn't develop the reds and the big bushy ness that it needed. Now, it probably was a little starved of being anchored into the ground or from getting enough nutrients because it was out of the flow pattern. That's the other thing to remember, is your TDS, your dissolved solids in your tank, that includes a lot of nutrients. So your nutrients are flowing through. And that's why I like doing daily fertilizers. And that doesn't mean you have to do them or add them every day, but it means that, I mean, you can. And whereas a weekly fertilizer, you're going to get this, bell curve where, boom, it's got all this energy and all this goodness, and the plants are growing well. But then algae, and any ammonia in the tank existing already is compounded by the nitrogen. So for me, it's really important when I have a tank that has, say, 30 of these ember tetras and 20 of the glass bloodfin tetras and 9 plecos and 8 corydoras in this 50-ish 45-gallon system with the filter and everything. It needs all this and all these layers. So the other thing, I think it's important to know is what's doing what damage wise too, because are these plants getting damaged? This is old damage, I happen to know, but this is a Logonandra carolensis. It's got big old broad leaves that should have algae on them if they were exposed to light, but yet it's down here in the dark, and so nobody's been chewing on it for a while. So the holes have cleared up, and they have what we call clear margins. So there's none of that clear tissue on the edges. That clear tissue that forms lets you know how long ago the thing died, and also whether you have a sufficient cleanup crew, whether that's shrimp or whatever. Now, in this Bacopa caroliniana, you can see there's skeletons of the leaves left. So that died more recently, but yet the plant has held on to it. I haven't trimmed it, but what I should really do is trim the crown of that and plant it down. So then we've got tissue that's already got really high nutrients. And anytime you've got nutrients up here in the plant, it can redistribute that down. It's a big network. It has a vascular network for a reason. And so it can redistribute, even if only one part of your plant is getting the nutrients it needs, or the CO2 that it needs, or whatever it may be, it will distribute it. Now, this crazy tangle, I need to sell some plants to some Seattleites is what needs to happen. But you can see that these crypts that don't even need that much light, honestly, look at just the pattern, the texture, the richness of color and boldness. Even with 1 or 2 of these leaves making it to the top, they share that. These are 2 different plants. The one that's just a normal tiger pattern versus the one that has the variegation or the stripe down the center. And over here's one that doesn't have the tiger stripes at all. This is a whole other plant altogether. Now, this tangle is so thick Here's another tiger stripe that's next to it down in the water. This stuff, I mean, it actually prioritized over the red. It started to go green again. See that? The red is going away. So it either didn't need the sunscreen effect or didn't have the minerals to create it, or it needed to bring the light all the way down into this dark area. And this dark, deep corner down here that's all the way down at the bottom has no light. So it needed that chlorophyll. It needed that green machine going in there. And it needed to distribute it. So I've been bad at looking the comments and questions. Let me do that real quick. Let's get back to sitting down real quick. Gonna turn this thing around. Freight train rolling. All right, let's see here. All right, let's get mic hooked back up. I probably won't notice a huge difference because I've had the headphone on the go mic hooked up with the little lava tube mic on the chain. All right, guys. So I'm gonna hop. Let me just double check because I don't want to miss any of the super chats. Oh, thank you so much, Michelle Kinsey. $5 super chat. I really appreciate it. Oh, I'm hitting things. I'm hitting microphones that are attached to cameras. I appreciate it. You know, everybody on YouTube with the channel right now knows that these is some slow times, and we definitely appreciate that extra little push, extra little bit of life and energy. Now, please, if you haven't yet and you're sitting here, you're hanging out with me, you're yucking it up, I mean, flush the toilet and click the like button. I mean, come on, you're at a guest's house. Lift the seat up. I only have 59 likes. You guys are eating my food and smelling my plants, watching me do a song and a dance for you, and you won't even just click a button for me. X out of the chat if you're on a cell phone. Click that thumbs up. I don't think it does any good. Or click the thumbs down for all I care. But let people know that you're learning, that we're learning together. I love you. All right, let's see here. So let me hit up some questions that I may have missed. Now, I apologize that I am a self-righteous, entitled, spoiled, self-centered, all these things, brat. And that I just went on a rant looking at plants and talking about plant growth rather than addressing each aqua science. Also, wonderful. Good morning to you in India. Right back at you. So as we were just talking about that and looking at plants up close, now you can look at me up close. It's time to get back to what's really important, me. Yes, comment for the algorithm. Thank you. Randy, Mr. Roman, appreciate it. You missed a dance, Mick? Well, sometimes dances are more metaphorical dances, okay? You know, like I mean, does a pleco have to dance for its mate? Do you need an epistogramma all the time or a guppy all the time? Can't I just be your pleco? All right, guys, I'm going off the hinges here. Let me answer some of these questions. All right, I'm gonna start at all over. So I'm sorry if I missed the questions that were scrolling while I was on a roll going crazy. Thank you so much, Steven. Here comes out the big dollars, making it rain in here. It actually just rained in Seattle, which was great. We needed that. There's been a lot of wildfires, but it's gonna raise the water in those local ponds, which makes it harder to catch fish, but at the same time, like the water's less sludgy and smells less like a sewer. So I appreciate that. Let's see here. Thank you so much, though. That's above and beyond with a $20 super chat, just throwing down the money, making it rain. Thank you. I appreciate that, Stephen. The Dr. Pepper is getting to me. Yeah, it might be. It might be. It's the first cool day in a long time. It's the first day I've gotten to wear a hoodie in forever. Of course, I went and did the trashy thing and didn't put a shirt on under it. So I'm just like, you know, I think I'm Burt Reynolds here with my 2 curly Qs. But in any case, all right. Let's see what other questions or myths I've mismanaged. I'm surprised I got that out without slurring all my words. Dragon Lair says, I have Salvinia maxima. Yeah, the minima too. I mean, both of them grow like crazy. But it says, I grows 10 plants on each plant every 12 hours. You compost 5 pounds of it a week. Yeah, so another thing to say about duckweed and Salvinia or well, really, other than like red root floaters and mosaic plant, pretty much true of everything that floats, like the hyacinths and stuff. Now, there's also a difference. I want to say there's a difference between floating plants that are free floating and tuber or bulb plants. Now, that's another, another myth. Like we call things on frequently, it kind of drives me nuts. People will say, oh, I'm going to get a floating plant like a tiger lotus or tiger lily. That's not a floating plant. It's not going to feed from your water column primarily. That's the other thing about Anubias and Java fern and Bucephalandra and Homelomenas. Those plants are very different than an Amazon sword or than a crypt. Now, they can withstand feeding from the water column more. You can overstock your tank. That's another thing people say, oh, I have a lot of plants. And one, that's subjective. That's a lot of plants. Literally, you cannot fit more plants than are growing in that tank. So that's a lot of plants. But a lot of times I'll see people say, oh, I have a lot of plants in my tank. I don't know what the problem is. And they've got like 6, 7 plants that are growing to the top. So keep in mind, look at what people post. Look at reference sources. I'm going to harp on it again, but it's sitting right here. Fishes of the Orinoco. Look at the environments. When you see pictures of a habitat, what is dense planting? What does dense vegetation really look like? And also use that in your tank. Look and see, oh, okay, the Bucephalandra and the Anubias, those are from different places. You wouldn't see them in the same place, but they're in the undergrowth. The tuberous floating plants, or things like water hyacinth or irises, things that grow out of a tuber or a bulb in the mud, lotuses and lilies, they still have a starch and energy source that then they can convert to sugars and things with them at all times. So they can send out trailers using that source of energy and then water, and their cells are just like water balloons. They just expand. So they just have these cell walls that usually cell walls are rigid on plants. They're rigid and they're square. Same with algae. Whereas in animals, they've got just these blobby protoplasmic filled things. Well, the plants don't have that luxury, but in those plants, their cells actually under a microscope, when they're reaching for the sun like that, they're using that energy reserve in the bulbs. Whereas if you have an Anubias, if you have the boost, if you have any rhizome plant, it can't feed from anything other than the water column. There's a few exceptions where they'll feed off of like parasitic plants, but for the most part, they're not getting anything from the rock or the thing. Lichen will, moss and algae will, but most plants will not. Moss is kind of one of those in-between ones. It was in between evolutionarily speaking. It happened very early. But, a thought to blow your mind is that there were no flowers when the dinosaurs were roaming around. Not that we think of as flowers. There were these basically the vase kind of flowers, like an iris. But the sexual plants, the male and female plants with pollination through animal use and bees and all that, what happened first, the bee or the flower? Well, it's the bee, because the flowers are they're like 50 million to 60 million years old, which is just really interesting in my mind. I just think I would have think it would have been older than that. Let's see here. So what other questions do we have going on right now? I'm waiting for them, guys. hit me with your best shot, or second best. Maybe cut me a little slack. Hit me with your second best shot. Fire away. That was so good. I bet they're gonna claim me on that. They're gonna copyright claim me. Experience with Limnophilia sessiflora immersed growth. That one I actually haven't grown immersed. I've grown Limnophilia aromatica, Limnophilia, I always say it wrong, but the hydroides or hippodroides it used to be called. They look very different. The hydroides one can look very different out of water. But they've got a very thick stem that's juicy. It's kind of like, you know, it's almost like celery. It pops when you get into that one. Whereas like Limnophilia aromatica, sessiflora, they don't have that stem that's quite as rugged. Some of the Niceas, also the Hygrophila pinnatifada, it's another one with one of those bulky stems. Those bulky stem ones, they have hydraulic and capillary action. I like to say it like a British person. That bring the water up. Like the whole thing is basically pressurized like a sewer system or a house plumbing. And so it takes very little change in pressure to just get another drop to the top. Whereas when you think about how much force is needed, if you had a tube with, say, I don't know, a cup of water even in it, and you were going to blow on that and it had to go up a pipe 30 feet high, think how much energy a tree would have to use if it literally had to lift stuff by, like we do with our veins, by squeezing. But it uses physics to its advantage, which is really fun. Alex, how do I make my 1-year-old red tiger lotus flower? Light, Aziz, light. Red light specifically. You want red wavelength light, and I mean, you can also lower, raise the TDS up, sometimes helps. Increase the alkalinity. I mean, it can go either way. Those grow in both acidic and alkaline environments. But essentially, it's that change. It's a change in temperature, light, even the angle of light. That's not super important, but might not hurt. But the red light, with multiple wavelengths, UVA, UVB, if you can get it, that's really going to be the key. And that's true for any plant. If you've got bluer, softer, or whiter colored light, you know, you're down in the Kelvin range of, you know, a cooler range. Whereas if you're real red, I wonder if I can pull up that actual, give you the real exact numbers of where each color starts. Yeah, I can, I'm sure. I have Iron Maiden stuck in my head so bad right now. Fear of the dark. Especially as we're talking about lights. All right, so like 1,000 would be, 1,000 Kelvin would be like real red, like candlelight, barely enough light, not enough energy. But you know, as we get into the 2,000 Kelvin, that's a tungsten, like early light bulbs that are kind of orangey colored, like old street lights in that 2,000 to 3,000 range, 4,000 maybe. And then as we get 4,000 into 5,000, we get into the incandescent light bulbs, the electronic flash, so not like a limelight or chemical flash, or phosphorus flash or anything like that, or manganese, magnesium, some of the other things we've done over time for photos. And then the direct sun over your head on a crystal clear day at the equator, that's going to be 5,500 or 5,700, 5,700 so Kelvin. And most of our plant lights are kind of wired in like the 55 to 7,500 range. And that is a huge difference. If you're down in the 5,000, you're going to get flowering or fruit fruiting growth a lot easier than if you're even at 6,000. So what you want to do is get your light to be blue or a whiter light. It can be natural sunlight, it can be your lamp, but that's why you spend this extra money too on plants. Now, the other thing I get asked is, can I just buy gels and put like a slide cover over? Can I put red cellophane over my light and then get it to flower? Kind of, but not really. It's about the energy wavelength, and there's infrared light and there's ultraviolet light on the other end, on the higher number end of the spectrum, like up into the purples. And so there's all these different things going on, and some of it has to do with how far apart each wavelength or photon packet group is, and some is the frequency, and some is the height of those things. And so you can fake it a little bit, but nothing works for, nothing substitutes for, there's no substitute for the real thing. GRB, Alex, do you know why I'd have very few or no mosquito larvae in my Daphnia pond? And there's a swamp wetlands across the road that is also full of Daphnia. And the mosquito. Well, do you have fish in there at all? But I think that my guess is you probably have some predatory creature in there, whether it's a worm or something like that. Or for all I know, I don't think this is true because I've seen it in the past, but your water just might not be stagnant enough. With the Daphnia in there, Daphnia eat algae. Now, if it's green water, I'm a little perplexed. I honestly don't know. You'll have to ask someone else. Also, the fact that you're in Australia complicates it a little bit more, right? Because it's a different set of mosquitoes. Here in America now, we have, in the US, we have a lot of different mosquitoes that have been introduced, especially in the South. Up here, we have a few extras beyond our normals. But I don't have many mosquitoes because my water isn't that green this year, because the Daphnia are eating it and the fish are eating the Daphnia. So everybody's getting eaten at such a crazy rate that it just, they like a certain water. They don't like flowing water. They don't like water that doesn't have the nutrients and the chlorophyll and the photosynthetic cyanobacterias and algae and zooplankton and phytoplankton. And they're eating that when they're little larvae. As well as any other little critters, microcrustaceans and isopods and whatever, who knows what else they eat, nematodes, things like that. How do I get green water? That's a great question. Green water, I mean, it's not necessarily about a wavelength or intensity. It's about the overall energy imparted into the water for how long. And so, like someone said, literally just pound that thing with light. You can hit it 24 hours a day. It's better if it's a high-powered light, but it doesn't have to be. Also, it's better to go with a vegetative, or rather a cooler color, than the red colors, generally speaking. But there are algae that can take up niches in the flowering category, like the ones we see in saltwater in the summer. In fact, there are some in that case. I did a video on red tides, cyanobacteria, and freshwater algae that you can check out about green water and blooms. But I mean, you also, ideally, you want to add nitrates, phosphates, and light. That's it. But you can overdo anything though. It really, checks and balances are good in that you could put some other plants in there, like some hornwort or something, to suck up if there's a real crazy amount of any of those things. Alan, good to see you. I needed to call you. But yeah, the contest officially ended originally August 10th, but we're kicking that up a month ahead because everybody's like, I need more time. The world is ending. And I hear you guys. And so I was saying September 10th because it's a Friday, I believe. So it would be a normal day for a live stream. But that being said, I'm fine with the 15th or whatever. I mean, I'm not that worried about it. I'm not that worried about what we say. If the 15th's better for everyone, then that's fine. Expensive rimless cubes worth it? No. It depends what, I mean, is Louis Vuitton worth it? Is Gucci worth it? Or is Helly Hansen or REI jackets or North Face? I mean, I'd rather buy a North Face, something kind of in between jacket than a Pendleton or, you know, something. I don't know. I'm trying to think of brands here. I'm not the best at brands, but they're all Northwest things. But yes, to a certain degree, you get better performance. You get better clarity if it's a low iron tank. They can be put together and hold more pressure or weight in, you know, so the likelihood of it bursting is lower. The way that you, the edges are finished and beveled, it's more a design thing. So it's more a preference thing. But I think there's a few things that we can say aesthetically. To me, it's a yes or no, black or white thing, that having a clearer glass is better in an aquarium. Of course, you want to see the fish better. That's my general opinion. Otherwise, get a pond. Next. But it's really a, you know, it's just like the, got the hiccups. Sorry, guys. It's just like the furniture you put it on. I mean, there's a few functionality things to it that are different. But other than that, it's personal preference. It's a industrial design. It's a home design preference. Let's see here. Alex, did you read the article about the study on algae blooms on Lake Erie? Yes, I did. That was a great article. We could even touch on that later too. Let's see. Yeah, Supreme. Somebody said, speaking of branding, yeah, there you go. That's the difference. All right, I'm getting antsy. My sciatic's acting up, so I need to kind of walk and pace and annoy everyone by my pacing. And I'm getting a little warm too. Let me turn the light on here. Let's come into the, oh, it's dark outside already. That's depressing. It's getting darker and darker, earlier and earlier, and soon we will all die. No. All right. What the contest? Yeah, I was gonna go with the 10th, but let's see here. Pulling up September. The 14th or the 10th. I don't care what you guys want to do. My thought was we'd probably, whatever due date, then us judges are probably going to need a week, maybe two, if there's really still 89 people or whatever submitting all that info. And there'll be a link. The original second link is still alive and well in the original posts. So go to my channel. I know it's not on a silver platter for you right this second, but if you need to see it or look at it, go to the thing and click the second link that says final entry form or secondary form. And it's got where you're going to enter your pictures and what you did and anything like that. But we'll post the link again, you know, the week of, on each of the things I do in my live streams, and probably maybe we'll do we'll do a standalone video, but of saying, hey guys, just a reminder. But a lot of times people don't get those. Definitely. Somebody say something about a midnight train to Georgia. He's leaving. Aquashella. I don't know right now, honestly. Money is part of it. I did get asked to speak at the other one, but they didn't. They couldn't cover any accommodation or any travel costs, and it, you know, it would have been $400. But the main reason I didn't go to the Florida one was because a lot of people, like for instance, Rachel O'Leary, that was on the flyer originally and stuff like that. They never confirmed that with her, and assumed from years past that that was going to be the case, and so she didn't come. And there were other politics and things going on too, but basically they just didn't have like a plan together super well at that point. And when I asked them, like, what's the deal with this, I was afraid that not that many of you guys, people, you know, of all of us hobbyists would show up, not the fact that it would happen. I knew that, especially in Florida, with the illness being around and everything. But now that the illness is not an issue, now I'm just at a new point where everything from the winter highs of the viewing hours on YouTube as a platform altogether almost double in the cold months of the Northern Hemisphere, which is the primary audience of YouTube. And so in the shorter watch time months, which is summer, it makes a big difference, to the tune of like off of all the YouTube stuff and then my graphic design stuff. Right now I've taken on some graphic design jobs also for money, because we got a house, and it doesn't mean we're poor, but we are, like, at this point I don't have a disposable income at the moment. So that will kind of determine the Aquashella. Like if they're willing to, if they want me to come and they want to pay for it and stuff, then that makes the choice a lot easier. But I will be at the Fishtober in Portland for sure. Be driving down there and hanging out for the whole weekend, hopefully catch a few different people. Got lots of good people down in Portland and in Oregon in general that I want to see, friends and stuff. And it's only a 4-hour drive. So let's see here. Alex, did you, oh wait, okay, we got that. Your Bacopa, I like that it auto, the auto correction was Bacopa caroliniana. Change it to backpack. Bacopa caroliniana, Bacopa tends to like harder water. I don't know where you live, but if it's been grown in hard water, which if it's from like Aquarium Co-op or the Wet Spot or Aquatic Arts doesn't usually get their stuff from Florida Aquatic Nursery. They don't have a ton of stuff from that. But if you got it in a little plastic cup with rock wool around it, that fuzzy grayish brownie stuff that looks fibrous and kind of filamentous, that stuff, if it's in that, or if it has a little name tag placard like a gardening, like you'd get at a garden store plants, that's probably Florida Aquatic Nurseries. And they have hard water in Florida, and not all their facilities. They do have some that have aquifers that keep it more neutral. But yeah, let's see here. Just cuttings with no roots in Michigan. Okay, so you're in Michigan. So you could have any sort of water for all I know, but I'm guessing it's probably softer if in Michigan from Great Lakes area. But, you've got cuttings with no roots. Get some root tabs if you haven't already, and aqua soil is going to be important. I wanted to cover a lot more myths. There should be a part 2 to this. I didn't even get through a third of the things I had. I mean, I was going to talk about whether you can grow plants in gravel and sand and what plants those are, acidic versus non-acidic water, what plants goldfish will or will not eat, how to stop goldfish from eating plants, how you can keep koi and carp and goldfish with plants, things like that. But I didn't get there. I got off on a tangent. Dennis, I have Growlux fluorescent 56K lights, my aquatic plants, and they're thriving. Why are these fancy lights so popular? Control, I think, lower energy for one. For where I live, the energy bill can get real expensive, like $300-400 every 2 months or something like that for a 2-bedroom house here in Seattle. And that's not running AC all the time or anything either. That's just at night we run AC, and in the summer we usually don't run the heat much at all. But you had to add water softener in Michigan, so you must have really hard water. The water softener itself can actually cause problems with some plants, like vals, crypts, they'll melt with both algicides and some water softeners. So I would do some water changes and see if you just, or you could even try to start it in a little cup or something with some aqua soil, some Fluval stratum, Eco Complete, ADA. I think ADA has the best brand and quality is just expensive. It's like, is it worth it though? To me, it is. When I want to do something that's going to be shared, I don't know if it's worth it to everyone else. But if it's going to be seen by multiple people, then that's why I like to use a mix of that with Fluval stratum as my soil. You can also use, you know, black gold or black cow or the Walmart organic potting soil to get it started and just flood it. No fish or anything, but you could try that. Like literally put it outside on your porch or float it with those nutrients. Let's see, part 2, 3, 4. You'll be here for me. Thanks, Angie. I appreciate that. Yeah, it can grow above the water line really easily. Bacopa is a really very easily immersed versus submerged plant. Same with Creeping Jenny, Creeping Charlie, all those creepy plants do that really well. And again, they've got a crunchy stem, which means they've got like a hollow stem or a stem with a lot of capillary action to keep the algae in check, which has nothing to do with that, but aluminium and putting things in the boot of the car. I hope you guys don't think I've gone completely insane. All right, but yeah, I mean, it's really the fancy lights. It's using less energy. For me, over the course of a year, I actually used less energy enough to the point where it paid for the lights with having 30 tanks and 25 of them planted or whatever. But also, you know, just a difference in the amount of waste product. There's not the glass tubes with like either mercury or, you know, other chemicals. It just depends on what brand you're using and things. I mean, these things can be avoided too, but some of the CFLs and some of the tube lighting in general can be like the T5s and stuff. Some of them, especially the cheap ones, can actually create quite a bit of hazardous waste after the fact too. So there's another thought of that. But also the other thing is being able to change the settings. A lot of those lights have timers built in. They have Bluetooth functionality, so you can sync everything in the room real easily. Fluval ones, honestly. Fluval is a little expensive, but I think that the Fluval ones are totally worth it if you're doing a planted tank over, say, 15 or 20 gallons. But below that, you don't need it necessarily. Or a deeper tank, then I like that. Or honestly, floodlights from Lowe's that are LED. And I've linked that in an episode I have called Let There Be Light under my live streams. There's 3 different live streams, like 6 hours of lighting details and talk, everything you could want to know, and all the lights I've owned and links to them. So to the cheapest prices I've seen. So yeah. But T5, I mean, I understand the appeal. They do put out a different quality of light. The LEDs are also more waterproof in that I drop them in the tank fully a bunch of times because I'm a dum-dum. Yeah. So I am going to call it an evening here. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I really do mean that. You guys are my boo, my crew, my ride or die, my do or die, my ride or die. And I just, you know, I love spending time with you guys, and I like that we have a time and a place that is ours, our time, our town. You know, thank you guys for participating, for chatting, for having good spirits and good vibes. If you have more questions, put them in the comments. I try to get to them. I got a little bogged down recently. Oddly, the amount of folks who are participating in the channel, let's say, a lot of you who leave questions and things like that, which I love. Thank you. I appreciate it. And those of you who share videos and all that stuff, love it. That's what keeps this channel going, and I appreciate it so much. But a lot of you guys keep talking and we keep interacting, yet the average yield of advertising or money for the channel dips way down, and then that, not so much the fact that like, oh, I'm not making, you know, 1,000 versus 1,500 off of something in a month as a channel. It's not so much that, it's that they're not showing the content to people, and then stuff gets dropped off and lost, and that's a bummer. So those of you who come along for the ride and stay up to date with what's out, what I've put out, you know, I work just as hard on most of my content. I'm not going to lie and say all of my content's my best work, but I work hard to not put up something that has nothing to say. Now, there's some videos that are slower paced and things, and try different things, but yeah. Let's see here. But yeah, I really just appreciate all y'all sticking around through the summer months and all that. It means a lot to me. And thank you, mods. Thank you, donators, super chatters, lurkers. Y'all are special to me. All your questions equally. But oh, my point was going to be that I was trying to get to member questions first. And lately, the question load has been the same, but the viewer load has been cut 40% or something for most YouTube channels. So that part is kind of like, wait, I'm doing the same amount of response, but half the people are watching. But it just tells me that the people who are interested and engaged, you guys are critically thinking. You guys have things that you can add and teach me. And that's so valuable. So I do appreciate it. And I wouldn't ever want it to stop. But my point that kind of got lost was just that I still have the same workload of answering questions and things, oddly, even though the volume of people watching the videos is diminished over the summer. And it'll pick back up, I'm sure of it. Alyssa, good to see you always. But I am going to get out of here. And I don't know, is Griff going right now? But oh, Lady Diane, hello. Good to see you also. Sorry you have missed the bulk of me. Here it is. There's the big fat part of me. Now you got it. You got the gist of it. But I am going to get out of here. I hope you all have a wonderful night, morning, evening, afternoon, day, tomorrow, yesterday. And let's all take care of our critters, our plants, our animals, our tanks. Kay, you missed the live. I'm sorry, but it's going to be around, and it's going to be uploaded in about 30 seconds. And you can still be a part of change you want to be. Be the that you want to see, and then watch my video or whatever. All right, guys, thank you so much. I will talk to you later. We'll talk in the comments. We'll talk in the future. We've talked in the past. Usually I'm talking to you guys. I guess I'm always talking to everyone in the past. Your comments in the past by the time I address it. So I will talk to you in the future, but I'll be talking to you in the past. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Hope that's clear. All right, I'll talk to you guys later in the past.